Welcome to our cannabis event. I'm Tom Bergeron. I'm the editor of ROI-NJ. We're thrilled you're here, and I think we can officially say it wouldn't be fake news that this is a standing room only event. So we're thrilled to have you. Listen, we like this number. To be honest, we sort of cut off registration. We probably could have had twice the people in the room. We like to do events at this size. I went around to all the tables before. We want to make this really conversational. We like to think of this as just a big cocktail party or a dinner party. We got some wonderful guests who I'm going to interview in a second. We're going to do some opening statements, talk about the industry, but we really want to make this interactive because you guys came here with questions. These guys are here to answer them, so we want to get going. All right, so thank you very much for coming. Let me do some quick introductions of who we got up here. First of all, LaQuay Jewell.
Yeah.
Perfect. VC guy, Obsidian. He's going to be here to talk about different investment opportunities that he's seen to get into the market. Second one is Randy Eigen.
Morning.
2 for 2. CBRE. He's going to talk about real estate and where we have in the state and what we're doing. And the third is Bill Caruso, lawyer, lobbyist, Archer Griner. He's going to do everything. He has a big picture. He's been following this for much longer than everybody else in this room, so we'll count on him to add some of the big picture stuff. Another sponsor is Eisler Amper that we're happy to have and happy to have their support. Thank you very much. Ben is over there from Eisler. A couple other people will be here, so we're glad to have them here as well. So let's get started. Again, what we're going to do is a couple of opening statements and go from there. So I'm going to start with Bill, who has been involved in the lobby and the legislation for many years, to give us an update. Governor Murphy came in. I think a lot of people thought on the first day he was going to pass a bill and people would be selling pot on the street corners on day 2. That obviously hasn't happened, and that's a good reason. I don't want to say there's been some hiccups, but it's been an interesting road since he's come in. Bill, why don't you bring us up to date on where the state of legalization and all that it means is right now?
Sure. We're lucky in New Jersey. You don't hear that often, but we are. We're going to go about this process a little different than some of the other states have. We've caught this fever, we've caught this bug, and we're interested in getting it right, and I think that's a good thing. And I think time is less relevant now, more about getting to the right answers. So we're in the middle of that process, but we're running a legislative process, not a ballot question process. The other states have done this through a ballot initiative. Jersey, that's a very messy proposition. We don't have enough time today to talk about all that, but we would amend our Constitution and embed this in the Constitution. Then there's experts in this room that understand messaging better than I do that have to figure out how to message a very basic message, but also a very complex one, and things that aren't written into a bill. So putting that aside, we're happy that we're at the legislative level trying to figure this out. But when you get into the legislature, you got to deal with the legislature. You have a multitude of different voices, different views. It's New Jersey. Looking around this room, there's a lot of different folks from a lot of different places, both regionally and geographically, socioeconomic, cultural, right? So that's our blend. That's what our draw is here in Jersey. So that's what our legislature looks like. So there's a lot of different competing concerns. And by the way, there's also some partisan hiccups we're seeing, right? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today because that's just the silly stuff that goes on. But you have a Democrat in office, and you have Democrats run the legislature. And there are Republicans that are out there on. I'm looking at one sitting out in the audience right now who's a good guy in this stuff. But there's some partisanship too, and you got to work all around that stuff. So the hiccups that Tom's talking about is we're in the legislative process. We're going to have hearings. We're going to have discussions. We're going to have folks with different ideas. And we're starting to see some of that come out. We're also starting to see some of the problems arise. What are we doing about DUIs? What are we doing about diversity in this industry? What are we doing about, actually one of my favorite things, and I will give you this anecdote. My 7-year-old discovered what gift cards are for Christmas. His uncle gave him a $30 Amazon gift card. A little shot for Amazon out there. And I've never
struggling, Bill, so thank you for propping
Yeah, I
them
know.
up.
They're having a really tough, Jeff Bezos having a really tough time out there. I've never seen this kid come alive. I mean, he's got $30 in his pocket. He's spent it 70 times over now, all right, since Christmas. And ladies and gentlemen, that's your state legislature. I mean, they see money here. They see revenue here. And the competing agendas and sort of how that revenue is going to be spent are also going to complicate this and figuring out where we're going to go. So where are we right now? Well, we're within the 100-day period that you hear about for newly elected officials, the president, the governor. Oddly enough, that will take us out sometime around April 20th. I'm just seeing who's paying attention. We're not going to get this done by April 20th. And that's for two reasons, and I think they're both good. Number one, the governor is spending a lot of his time and capital on a larger issue of cannabis related to expanding medicinal. That's long overdue. We have broken that system here in New Jersey, and so I'm happy the fact that he has taken time. He's devoted every staff resource in the Department of Health and other folks that are experts on this. He's reached out in a very collaborative way beyond just industry to patient advocacy groups and others to get this right. And I think we're going to finally get medicinal right, I hope. That process is going to happen without the legislature. That's going to happen mostly at a regulatory level going on in government right now. It's happening right now. They're working on it. Literally, one of the deputy commissioners told me her job was to figure out where her desk was, where the bathroom is in the hallway, and go get this medical marijuana regs right. And that's what they're working on. On the legal side, that's got to go through the legislature. So that process is going forward. And we had the legislature and the new governor seated last month. Right? We're still in February? Yep. Mm-hmm. So in January last month, we've been in this process about 6 weeks with the new government, new legislature. Bills are being introduced. A plethora of new bills from folks that were never involved in this effort previously, expanding medicinal, looking at innovative ways to look at legal, addressing some of the core problems, looking at tough issues like expungement of criminal records. The legislature is engaged right now. And I see some of my esteemed colleagues sit in the audience that track this stuff and know this. The sort of Mount Rushmore lobbying sitting out in this audience right now, ladies and gentlemen. These folks know this. They see when the game's starting to pick up. And it is. There's a pace coming with this. But there's a lot of problems, too. There's a cacophony of voices out there right now. There's opposition out there to this effort. And this is going to start working through the legislative process. And there's going to be an interworking going on back and forth. But one area that I think has confused things, but I personally think it's a great thing for some of the things we've been working on. Senator Rice last week, I think it was last week, announced an effort related to decriminalization, which has been viewed as opposition to this larger effort of legalization. And it may very well have been the senator's intention to that. I don't see it as that. And I'll tell you why. Senator Rice has never supported anything related to cannabis in the legislature. In fact, in the original medicinal bill, he didn't support that. And when a decriminalization bill moved in 2012 with the state's first African-American woman speaker, who now serves as our first African-American lieutenant governor, that bill moved out of the assembly and died in the state senate. Mm-hmm. And no one jumped to rescue that decriminalization bill, which would have been groundbreaking at the time. That's okay. That means that Senator Ron Rice has started to come around on this issue, and others like him that weren't even there on these other issues have come around. That's incremental change. It's moving in the right direction. We're not going to get everybody. There's good Republicans out there. I'm not going to out them now. They'll do that themselves. But I know that there's good Republicans in the legislature out there that are working on this, trying to understand the issues and get there. And there are good Democrats that are doing the same. So that process is going to continue. And my prediction, everybody, and I will wrap this up for you, my friend, is this is a June process. Magic happens in June in Trenton. We pass a $36 billion state budget. $36 billion. Now, interesting thing, most of that money is already accounted for and going out the door. So the amount of money that's sort of discretionary and can be wrestled with in the halls of Trenton is a lot limited, more limited. I expect the governor will look to his legislative partners and they'll try to book some revenue attached to this in the upcoming budget. That will create an effort, I think, to drive some of this momentum. And then as these issues are being discussed of what we're doing with racial diversity in the industry, there are going to be important voices at the table that are going to demand those things are written in the bill. What are we doing related to expungement? What are we doing related to home rule and mayors that have control about where this can go in their town and what they want it to look like? What are we doing about the taxation side? What are we doing about the amount of licenses and where they can go? And all these different things that are being discussed right now. What are we doing about DUI and training drug recognition experts until technology comes on board, hopefully developed here in New Jersey, that will help develop breathalyzer technology. All of these things are being discussed right now, and they're being worked out through the Office of Legislative Services and individual legislators' office. In June, the goal will be to have it all come together in the final bill that will get worked out the legislative process.
And all of these things are being discussed around one central point. It's the reason why I think a lot of you are in the room today, and that is money. There's a lot of money in this business, a lot of money to be made, a lot of money coming in. So I'm going to go to LaQuay here, who is in charge of Obsidian Elite Investment Associates.
Yes.
Association. But the better way to describe him is he's just a regular on the Cannabis Tour. He only has 2 events that he's doing today, which is a light day. So he knows the topic. He knows the money that's coming in. He knows where people are trying. Everyone's, hey, I got a lot of money. I just want to get involved in this. What can I do? So let's talk a little bit about the money that's coming in that you guys are seeing, how people want to get involved, where it's going, and how clueless are people other than, hey, I got money, and I think I'm going to make some, so I want to jump in on this.
Okay. So I'm coming to the whole cannabis industry not from the advocacy side, which most African Americans who are involved in the cannabis industry come from the social justice and advocacy side. We come from the business community, myself and my 3 partners, and we pretty much came into the knowledge of the idea that we're going to actually move towards adult use legalization in New Jersey, and we were totally flabbergasted by the idea that we would actually do that somewhere in New Jersey. So once that became a reality, because it was a reality that Murphy was going to be elected, we started to figure out where do we best fit in the market. And where we saw a vacuum is, if you look at the room right now, I would say maybe 85% is Caucasian. And the reality is about 40% of the consumers of this particular product are African American. The other 20% Latino. So we occupy a large portion of the market, and it's a fair market. But we don't occupy in legalization the ownership. About 5,000 plus licenses have been awarded for retail, and less than 5 have been awarded to African Americans. We're taking a large portion of the illegal trade that is going on right now and basically just changing ownership. That means that capital is going to leave our community. Where's that going to come back? So consumption, we're doubling down. We're doubling down on injury and insult to a community that's already been ravaged. Now, to your question, in terms of investment, we decided that we were going to enter into the VC market, the equity market. We wanted to help startups for companies that would have great ideas. They may be able to get a license. They're going to need capital. And a lot of these guys are Wall Street guys, and they're not going to provide capital to a Latino or African American. It may not be something that you're aware of, but it's a hard knock just to get capital in general. So if you're coming from a minority community, you may not qualify for other reasons. So we wanted to be able to bridge that gap and make sure that they had that capital. Now, the other challenge was, how are we going to be able to get people to invest in our company? 98% of the African American community does not qualify as an accredited investor. So most of the opportunities in the VC and equity market don't even allow us to solicit or to mention these type of offers to them, so they don't qualify. So we created an association that allows them to be able to basically contribute to our company, and then we will front those basic offers to these various companies. That's how we get past that hurdle. In so doing, we've been able to open up the door to basic civil workers, middle class, and working class people to be able to invest in this market right along with millionaires to be able to receive the same type of returns. This is a windfall for not just the wealthy, it needs to be a windfall for the overall community. And we wanted to make sure that that was available not just to minorities, but there are many Caucasian community people that are working class that they don't know how to get in this market as well. What are they going to do, buy penny stocks? And that's a gamble. We want to provide them with an opportunity that gives them dividends and real equity within this market.
All right, the subject of today is logistics. So we've got our CBRE guy here, Randy. So let's talk about warehouse space for this. On the one hand, look, this is great. We've got all these issues. On the other hand, industrial has been going nuts lately. There's a whole lot of issues. Let's do the view from 5,000 feet on the real estate sector and how this could play into all of the pieces involved here.
Sure. So what's happening in terms of industrial real estate in the state of New Jersey is, first of all, 3PL, which is third-party logistics, came to New Jersey about 3 years ago in a big way, and the amount of space that got consumed by that was in the multiple millions of square feet. And if you, I have a handout on the tables, looks like this. You might want to take a look at some of the statistics. But basically, you know, we have a pretty large market in the state of New Jersey for industrial space, but we have a very small amount of vacant space right now. And the growers are looking for B and C quality space, not A quality space. And as you could see, there's around 15 million square feet of vacant space. And from our observation of other markets like California and Colorado, we're estimating that this industry could occupy about 20 million square feet. And so that could be a real challenge for industrial space throughout the entire state.
And the thing with logistics is not just the industrial space. I'm going to turn it back to Bill to talk about all of the one-offs from, okay, we've got a place where we're growing it.
Yeah.
And then logistically, how do we get it to points A, B, C, and D? What are the different areas that come in? Because that's really, I think, a part of the cannabis thing that some people haven't realized is there are so many one-off areas where you're going to make money or be able to be connected to the business that people haven't fully recognized. Give some examples of that, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, we're very blessed here in our state because it's not just the industrial properties that I think can be attractive. You've got to really think outside the box in these places. Mm-hmm. And I said to you I was going to tie this into advocacy, and I'll give you your first call to action, ladies and gentlemen. One area we're losing this battle right now is at the local level because of misinformation. Although it's turned a little bit back to our favor, we've seen town councils immediately rush out because they're confused about what they're going to be forced to do, say no. And that was the easy hit, right? Just we're going to say no right now. They've actually frozen. They've used technicalities in the law to put things on second reading so that they can be ready if they need to and they're not pulling the full trigger. So I think there's been some education in this. But I had an interesting conversation with a mayor in South Jersey who's got this blighted Kmart. And we were having this conversation. This Kmart sat in a vacant shopping center for almost a decade now. There's never going to be another Kmart in that effort.
And I think we're all happy for that.
Well, and listen, people shopped at that Kmart.
Right.
They don't.
That was jobs.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
And exactly, and there were jobs in that Kmart. And more importantly, there was tax revenue for the town, right? So the question came up because there's innovative efforts going on in this new industry forming where they're using repurposed shopping malls and other sorts of buildings for grow and retail facilities. If somebody came to you and said, we're going to turn that Kmart into a vertically integrated grow and retail facility and that were permitted under state law to do that, what would you say? And his answer was, I don't know. Because, I get it. That's like a hard sell to the town, but what else are we going to do with that property? His first question then was, well, what's next to it? Because I got a whole vacant shopping center. I said, I don't know. And we start talking, right? And there's a conversation going, and he's thinking now, and he's thinking from an economic development standpoint on a parcel of land that we probably haven't even thought about that might be utilized. The other side of this space is, for all you farmers out there, I don't think we're going to have open air grow. I just don't see that contemplated, both for logistical reasons. We don't really have that kind of season. And I don't think that the legislature would be willing to allow that. And it doesn't seem like that's where the action's going. But greenhouse grow will be. So there's a whole other section of our state, right, that is, agriculture and nature. And they're looking at this in a different light than maybe we would be up in this region of the state. And so I do think you're going to see robust greenhouse efforts that will occur as well, and there's a lot of that going on too.
Randy, are you seeing people coming to you looking for property that they might want to use in a different way than that normally had, what's available, and asking you different questions that you can sense where they're going with this? As everyone's trying to figure out when and where and how. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, we are. And one of the interesting things is the regs are being discussed right now. So we don't know exactly what they're going to look like. But in a lot of other states, they've really relegated the use to industrial zones. So if that's the case, then that's one consideration. They've also had limitations like you can't be less than 1,000 square feet from a school. Some communities have also included 1,000 square feet distance from residences. Mm-hmm. So we don't know if those are going to be the regulations we'll see here in New Jersey. But so if it's a retail location, it may not qualify. We don't know yet. And so there are a lot of questions, and the regulations have to be passed through legislature to really determine that. Questions that we're getting are, what size are people looking for these uses? And what we're learning is from the other markets that they are most efficient in the 50,000 to 90,000 square foot size range. So that apparently is that's the sweet spot. Some of them are as small as 15,000 square feet, but our thinking is in the state of New Jersey, we have a tremendous population, and we don't expect to see smaller ones. We think we're going to see the larger ones.
I'm going to go to you guys in 1 second, so if you have questions, get ready. I know I got Joanne over there with the microphone, so we'll go to that. But I'm going to go to LaQuai real quick. When people are talking about investing, are they understanding from, we've talked about packaging companies, we've talked about shipping companies, we've talked about small van, large van, all of these other parts that go on the industry that have nothing to do with the selling or the growing or the selling in that distribution. Do people understand the opportunities that are out there?
It varies. It depends on what level of investor we're talking to. We have various tiers in our association. For the general investor, they don't necessarily understand. They just think dispensary or possibly cultivation. We explain to them that we're going to invest in broad companies throughout the entire industry, as well as ancillary companies as well, because we have to spread out the money that we're going to invest. We're doing a $50 million raise. So I wanted to piggyback on a couple of things that they've already stated. I probably know the mayor that you're talking about because I know the Kmart that you're referring to. I'm a South Jersey guy. And from our standpoint, we've been talking to a number of people out in Oregon, a number of people who are growers, that they believe that we could possibly get 2 to 4 seasons out of New Jersey, but it depends on what the legislation says. Mm-hmm. If they do allow us to use commercial retail locations, we have plenty of that throughout the state. That Kmart that you're referring to would be an ideal location. And the mayor was open to it, but he started off the conversation basically, we're not going to do retail. And I said, well, hold up. You might want to consider, because this particular town has quite a bit of unemployment and quite a bit of vacant businesses, but due to the outlying municipalities that are there. So in our research, we actually go around and speak to a lot of the municipalities to see who's friendly. And that you need to do that because you need to find out. You may be able to get a license, but they may not permit you in the area where you want to actually set up. And for our company, when we're looking to invest in a particular client, we want to make sure that their business model actually works for our investors. So that means that we have to have all of the resources in place to be able to support them on their growth cycle within this industry. So most of our investors don't necessarily know the fullness of the cannabis industry at certain levels, but a lot of our accredited investors do. And they're pretty much waiting, like the rest of us, for the actual legislation to be signed into law.
Hey, Tom, can you just jump off on one point there that's important and train all the new lobbyists in the audience? You made a good point about where the state law is going to be, and we don't know that yet, and that's working. But this advocacy at the local level matters, too, because there's a chicken and egg. You can get your license, and you don't have a location, or you can have a location, and you don't have a license, right? You've got to kind of do both at the same time. But there's abilities to work with nervous mayors and town governing bodies that want this but don't want that. Or I've heard folks say, well, I'm for medicinal, but I don't want any of this legal stuff, right. And they don't really understand it all. But you can rezone. There's a lot of work going on right now unrelated to cannabis at the municipal levels related to redevelopment zones and things of that nature. And I'm looking out in this audience again. I know there's some folks out there that are in the law profession, engineering profession that are involved in these kind of things. There are professionals out there that help on this stuff. This is a tool for both the state level to work at, but also at the local level to be very collaborative. And that, I think, there's a lot of opportunities there to get mayors right, to get town councils right with this. Find that problem in the town, figure out how to all come together and solve it, and this may be one of those components, and you're solving his problem by keeping it in a section of town or where she is. You keep it off the main street and out of the school zones and out of residential zones, but it might also help them solve a problem in town, too.
Mm-hmm. Jump in. Rick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Bill, long time no see.
Good to see you, sir.
So I have 2 questions, but I want to get to the first one, the legislative question first. I don't know if any of you know, there's a guy by the name of Tom Angel. There's a guy by the name of Tom Angel. Hi, I'm Rick Frimmer from Eisler Amber. By the way, we have some stuff outside on your way out on cannabis banking if you're interested. There's a PowerPoint. Tom Angel is a guy who publishes a daily newsletter, and it's called Marijuana Moment. This is what he published this morning about New Jersey. New Jersey regulators announced that they will not appeal a court ruling mandating that they reconsider marijuana's Schedule I status under state law. The second sentence is the one I'm going to ask you about. Separately, a survey of lawmakers suggested that marijuana legalization legislation would be defeated if a vote would be held down. How do you react to that?
Yeah, I think that's true, but that's why there's not going to be a vote held right now.
Right.
The bill, Senator Scutari is one of the leaders on this effort. It's been that way for a while. Has a bill, and everybody keeps asking me, what bill? There are tons of concepts floating around, so there's really no bill right now. So if you put Scutari's bill up, it would fail because it doesn't deal with a lot of the issues we just talked about. There's some placeholder language in there, as he said, the issue of expungement, okay? This is to say if you were arrested yesterday for this and today it's legal, we should go back and look at some of these criminal records, or if not all of them, and have them expunged, and how you do that and what resources have to be thrown at that because it's an expensive and long drawn process. That's right. That's fair. That's good. But it's also very complex and expensive to figure out how to do that. And so Senator Scutari said, it's not in my bill. You can get it in our bill if you want, but go figure out how to get it done and get the votes for it. So the advocates are out doing that. And there's a bunch of issues like that that have to be worked out. So yes, that is accurate. But I just said earlier, this is going to be a process that's going to come in June. This stuff's going to get worked out. There's a hearing on Monday in the Assembly, the first hearing, by the way, that the Assembly's taken up on this issue. So I am confident this will get done. I do agree, though, they don't have the votes to do it today.
So this is one for the real estate guys. So I'm from California. One of the big issues in California as we roll out our new statute, which went into effect January 1, is that the growers tell me, and believe me, I'm far from being a cultivator, that the best technology out there is light deprivation. And there are a lot of greenhouses companies that have adopted Danish and Dutch architecture to design these light deprivation greenhouses. And most of the communities in California are having to rewrite all of their zoning laws because these are the snow weight and other architectural aspects of these things are not quite the same as glass greenhouses. So my general question is, what do you need to do, or what needs to be done statewide in order to accommodate indoor growing techniques other than retooling industrial buildings in order to make it efficient?
I think one of the biggest things that we're looking at is the need for power. Power is a great element to growing. And so I'm not so concerned about the physical structures because it seems that the growers know how to work around them. There are some existing facilities that they've taken, B-class and C-class warehouse buildings with 16-foot ceiling heights, which are inadequate for today's warehousing purposes, and they've made them into very efficient growing facilities. The key really is having the power that's needed, and I think across the state, there's a concern for the amount of power that this is going to consume. If you look back about 10 years ago, we started building data centers, and data centers were also huge consumers of power. The state of New Jersey has a very high cost of electrical energy, so data centers are not being built any longer in New Jersey, partially because of that. So this is now going to be the next phase of big energy consumers. I'm not sure that there's really that much concern about the architectural aspects of it. It seems that they know how to work around that. So
let me ask you a follow-up on that. Is there an issue with north, central, south as far as what's available and how it could be grown? Do you see one region having a better opportunity to step into this than other areas?
Well, I think there are a couple of different things. One is the agricultural base of our state is still it's a big piece of the economic pie, and to give them an opportunity to grow marijuana, I think, is definitely a very big boon for them. Mm-hmm. And I think we all know that most of the farmers across the state don't really do very well economically. So if they can get a piece of the pie, I think it would be a wonderful thing. But I don't think geographically there's much of a difference because in the northern portions of the state, where we do have a lot of the supply of older industrial space, that's certainly going to be appropriate for growers. And in the south, if they want to go to greenhouses, they can utilize the land that's available in the south.
And I'll answer my own question and point out that in Newark, you have Arrow Farms, which is doing wonderful things and wonderful growing right in the heart of an urban area. So there certainly seems that there would be potential there. Did you want to jump in on that?
I was just going to say that we have plenty of growers in South Jersey that are waiting for this legislation to pass. They have, I have 10 acres. You think I can set aside 3 or 4 acres? So in our book of business, we're looking to find those people who actually have land that they want to set aside and see what we can lease it at now. Because once this comes into the market based upon our research in Oregon, you're looking at values to triple. So you want to start now.
Yeah, and a point I'll make to you that I don't think we made earlier that's important. Jersey's about to jump off this cliff. Other states have done it already, and there'll be others that will follow. But we're in a very special time. Jeff Sessions made an announcement last month that sent shockwaves through this industry, but kind of didn't. Everybody thought it was going to have this chilling effect that it did, but it didn't. And what it actually has done, and I look to my friends out here that travel in the federal circles, they got Congress to unite on an issue. You actually have Republicans and Democrats for the first time really working on, riders to budget language, PTSD initiatives, rescheduling or descheduling. We're on the march to an effort at the federal level that will ultimately undo some of these barriers. It's not going to happen tomorrow. That's good for us. Because when we put our flag on the map here, we're in. Jersey's in. There's a lot of good reasons why the industry wants to be here in Jersey beyond just the fact we're going to be one of the additional legal states. But when the feds decide they're going to get with this program too and they break down the barriers of interstate commerce, everything on the map is frozen. The industry is going to look to consolidate, and they're also going to look not to recreate all this stuff they have to recreate every state by state, including the logistical transport systems and all the like. You can truck it back and forth now, right, in between states when the interstate commerce comes down. So Jersey's development of this industry right now, not just the growing spaces, because that might dissipate at some point in time, but the R&D that's going to go on, the type of activity that's going to come from our own ingenuity that's going in every day in this industry, these are going to be the new companies that are going to headquarter here, and they're going to stay here. So that's an exciting effort, too, that I don't think we're even focusing on. That we're in a race with the federal government right now to get this right and get it done and put a flag on the map.
Hi, Justin Alpert, attorney at Asher Alpert, PC. First of all, thank you to everyone at ROI for putting this on. It's incredible to see so many skilled, educated people show up in suits like this in this industry. It's great to see this turn around. There's been a lot of advocates through the years who wouldn't fit in this room, who've really pushed this issue forward, especially during the Christie administration. And the best way for anyone in this room to help push it through is to call your legislature. Call your legislators, build a relationship with your legislators, let them know that this is an industry that you want to get involved in and you want to do responsibly and you want to build it out. And to Bill's point about relating to the Kmart, that's how we push through medical. By talking to people and say, hey, I know someone who had cancer. Do you know someone who had cancer? As soon as they knew someone for whom it worked, that's when medical got through. So it's about creating relationships, especially with your legislators and with your local business people. 2 questions, if I may. Starting with Bill. Bill, what's the appetite in the legislature on the Democrat side for disaggregating the verticals and really creating a broad sense of liberty and prosperity here in the New Jersey where people can practice growing, can build up their model, can step forward, or in any of the ancillary businesses, even be able to touch the product to process it. What's the feeling on the Democrat side there?
I think it's good. I think, listen, I'm not going to blame them because it's not through the fault of their own, but we have a vertically integrated effort here right now. It's not been all that successful. Again, it's because of the restrictions that have been imposed on them. But we have that system in place. I think they're looking to build upon that. I think the first evidence you can see of that is in the expansion that you're going to see in medicinal. Now, I don't know what they're going to come out with. We don't have any idea yet. We just have hints. including what the governor said in his press conference when he announced it.
By the way, medical and legal, those are just labels, really.
Understood.
And most people in this room would be happy to get into either one.
I get that, and I want to talk to them about them separately because I think they're different processes. And on the regulatory level, the governor's going to expand medicinals. We just talked about earlier. He said, I want to have these opportunities for smaller licenses. I think he even said, we want to just do everything through vertical integration. At the legislative level, I think that's more of an education process. I think folks in this room understand what vertically integrated facilities look like and what they are. I think there are members of the legislature who don't even know what that terminology is yet. So I think and I don't say that to demagogue them. This is an education process, and you were exactly right what you just said. We have to call, we have to advocate. But I think when you talk with legislators and you hear what they're saying, they're very much saying what we're talking about here is there's a stratification of where you can fit in this, and we all can fit in this. And that's where I think they want to get to.
Thank you. One follow-up question. There's a woman at the ACLU who speaks very brilliantly about how to go into the urban communities with this and make this work. This may be a question, may be a comment. You can take it however you please. Are you thinking about how to grow the economic structure in the urban communities where there's access to capital generally? So it's not just the cannabis industry, but if someone wants to open up a knitting store or something, and it's also for you in real estate, how do we create affordable spaces for the entrepreneur, where all the money's not going straight back to the real estate investment trust, but where banking and credit and development start happening locally and accountably, so this can be part of a positive process? And again, before you answer, one last comment. Everyone, please call your legislators. Thank you.
Great question. I'll take that one. Our model is not cannabis. Our model is investment education. We are an investment association. There are a number of industries that we're looking to get into. And what we identified straight off of the bat with this particular industry, because our community has an understanding of cannabis, truth be told. So therefore, it's not a hard sell for people to understand the type of profit model that exists in cannabis. To see a 900% return, a 1,000% return, people didn't start selling drugs because they wanted to get into an illicit industry. They started selling drugs because it made money, and they understood that. So now that you're legalizing it and we have an opportunity to get involved, we're going to take advantage of this windfall in our community and develop models not just for investment in cannabis, but in energy, investment in business development as an overall, and provide capital for multiple verticals throughout different industries. So that's our model. Cannabis just happens to be step one for us.
Yeah, let me respond on the real estate side. There are still a number of issues with respect to this whole industry because it's not federally legal. And the banking regulations don't look favorably upon it. So right now, if you are a REIT, a real estate investment trust, you're not going to be leasing space to a grower or to anybody in that industry. So that's a big problem. And a lot of the loans that support real estate do not permit you to lease your space to an illegal user. So that's the problem that I see as being one of the major hurdles. And today, the average purchase price of an industrial building is $89 a square foot. From our observations, we think that number is going to double within the next year. And I think Bill had mentioned that lease rates on the spaces can double or triple. Right? You mentioned that before. And
it's a deeper conversation, probably for another panel, more general.
All right, let me cut gentleman in the blue. You got the microphone, you're up.
Hey, I'm Sean from HGOT Industries. My company and I have built a platform that connects our clients to dispensaries to their customers at home, and so it's a home delivery-based system. And I want to know, after speaking with my client, Grisman, thanks, Bill, what is the current, temperature as far as home delivery, and also what to do about these counties and these mayors that may not be as amenable as others. So as far as the delivery, how do we get around that? And as far as home delivery for recreational, what is the current temperature out there in New Jersey?
Can I jump into that one? First of all, shh. Don't tell anyone. We got any mayors in the audience out there? All right, we can talk. I'm being silly, but this is not an issue that's being talked about that loudly. And it is quietly being discussed with mayors that are out there, and I think this has had a little bit of the chilling effect. They're like, not in my town, it ain't going to happen. Well, if the legislature comes in and allows for home delivery, I don't know how you stop it, because you have to have border checkpoints, right, or folks flying in and out. Now, there'll have to be a licensure process and all that, and it gets complicated. And I will say this to you. As we sit here talking about how and when this gets done, this is one of those things that I think is on the outskirts of whether it gets done or not, to be perfectly honest with you. This has some trouble around it. If you went to everybody and said, what do you think? I think most people lean to, I don't really care. And then you start talking about home delivery, like, oh, well, wait a minute, you know. I think it's irrational, but you got to deal with some of these issues going forward. I don't think there's going to be an effort at the town to stop it if it's allowed at the state level. I think because we'll have sold it at the state level, and that's going to have to happen. Now, the other thing I will tell you, though, is there was a question about what we were going to do related to medicinal. And I think that becomes a more important component, because if you're too sick to go get your medicine, how do you get your medicine? And we have this very cumbersome caregiver program, which, if you're the kindness of your heart, you decide you're going to help your mother or your grandmother or whatever, you can register for a fee to go do that. And after she's registered, he's registered for the fee. We're very fee happy in the state. So there's a question going on right now whether or not this governor has the regulatory authority to allow home delivery and a medicinal expansion. I don't know the answer to that. My guess, having worked on that, I was the executive director at the time we passed that law, I don't know that they do. I think you could fool around with that caregiver effort and maybe expand that, and that may be where they do, but probably need legislative authority. And that's a sticky wicket right now, because I get the sense the general view of legislators is that's a lot to regulate who's in charge. I mean, we just had a big fight about Uber that took up most of the oxygen in the legislature for a year. Now we're going to get to this level.
Maybe they can deliver.
You never know.
All right, I'm going to go to Bill Pascal.
Can I add to that?
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. Hey, just a quick question. Isn't there a question about speed to market as far as New Jersey versus Pennsylvania?
Right.
So what if Pennsylvania legalizes first? Does that take a little air, wind out of the sails for New Jersey? I mean, talking about commercial space, talking about dollars, and talking about folks here that have land here that want to grow.
I think from the standpoint of supply and demand, even if Pennsylvania beat us, I think we'd still develop a very large industry as a result. That's my opinion. I think there's a lot of room for growth in the industry. No pun intended. But
it goes back to what we talked about. There's this race to what the feds do, because right now, even if Pennsylvania can build the largest one they want, they can't cross the border with it. I don't get the sense that Pennsylvania is that further along. They're in a gubernatorial election this year, and the other issue is they're looking to expand their medicinal program, which is kind of lacking right now. So I think they're in that path. And oddly enough, New York's decided to kind of dip a toe in, but they're not really there. So Delaware was nipping at our heels at one point, but we're actually really well situated right now. And I think Maryland was down a path, and then they stalled. But Jersey, I think, is well suited right now, particularly if this June deadline, if we hit this June deadline, we'll beat everybody.
the other thing we haven't spoken about is the fact that the industry is really still trading on cash.
Yes.
Which for real estate is a real problem. If you can imagine somebody coming to pay your rent in cash, it's an issue that has to get resolved. So I know that there's been talk about governor coming up with some solution for that, but so far it's still an issue. I mean, to the point where the growers today are literally paying everything, including their employees, including real estate taxes, in cash. Imagine going with literally, suitcases full of cash to pay for these things. So it's kind of a bizarre thing, and I think that really speaks to the transportation, the delivery model that Sean was referencing before. I think if they can come up with a cashless system so that, the transaction is paid for in advance and there's a delivery, I think that would solve a lot of problems, actually.
Bill. Thanks, Tom. Good morning. And thank you, Tom and ROI, for providing this morning's opportunity. I think this has been a robust discussion. My name is Bill Pascal III. I'm a partner in Princeton Public Affairs Group. Mr. Jewell, I think that you represent one of the most critical elements of this conversation, and I want to encourage you. I haven't had the privilege to meet you till this morning.
Thank you.
I want to encourage you to maybe rethink a comment you made just a few minutes ago, and I understand what you do. It's valuable. It's very important. Phil Murphy said 2 years ago when he was trying to secure the nomination for governor, to me personally, and I'm sure he said it to others, there is nothing more important to him than making sure that the people involved in this industry don't look like me, just me. So I apologize to those who look like me in the room, but that's a pretty powerful statement.
Right.
And Bill Caruso made a point, and I'm sorry I missed your name, but Justin made a valuable point. You can't stay on the sidelines while this is going on, waiting for the legislation. You need to be involved in the conversation, because that is an important contribution for what the law is going to look like in the end.
Right.
And so I would encourage you, I know what folks like you do. You wait and then you strike. But I think by the time the law is passed, there may be some things, contributions you could have made that would not be heard. You remember, Governor Corzine signed this bill. That bill was in the government working on when we were on the outside lobbying, just before Governor Christie took office for medical marijuana. And it had a slow burn because Governor Christie had no appetite for it. And so we're making up for lost time, because it probably would have happened sooner in New Jersey on the rec side had Governor Christie not been so antagonistic towards it. And I think the pamphlet here, Mr. Eisler, that your company has put out on banking is a very valuable tool, because I think that's the second most critical component, much like we discussed in the internet gaming legislation. How do you bank this? How do you cross state lines? And I think part of the solution evolves around something all three of you can contribute to, and that is Governor Murphy's state bank issue. Mm-hmm. I believe that was a major reason for why he wanted to do that. I think the state bank hasn't gotten off the ground because there hasn't been the conversation yet with the banking community. But I'm hopeful, Mr. Jewell, that you can be a part of this conversation. And I thank you for the contribution you're making to the discussion.
Thank you. Great question.
We're becoming more like Oprah every time. A lot of it. It's all right. It's all good.
Great question, and I appreciate the comment. Let me clarify what I meant by we're waiting. We're not accepting actual investment dollars until we know exactly what the playing field is going to look like. Other portions of our organization that are not necessarily directly part of the association are gentlemen like Leo Bridgewater. Mm-hmm. Leo Bridgewater is one of the seminal individuals that brought us into the industry. So all of our partners were introduced about a year ago to cannabis in an industry way at his house, where they did a presentation. And from a business standpoint, it was jaw-dropping, and, this is going to actually come to pass. So that's what started us on that process. He is directly involved along with a few other people that we have direct connections to in those conversations, who are adeptly aware of what we would like to see in this bill. We felt that the language that was in Senator Scutari's bill, the first one, was very light when it came to minority participation. And considering the amount of damage that has been done by the war on drugs to our community and the Latino community, for us not to participate is unacceptable. So on one hand, although I may not agree with Senator Rice's position, I do believe that it's necessary to have an anchor that is pushing the other direction, basically so that we can make sure that this is done appropriately and to represent everyone.
Well, I'm going to add something to you because I want to provide some external validation from the field.
Okay.
You know who's out there advocating, and Billy, you know this, and there's some other folks out there that are real pros, that there's some trench battles that need to occur, right, that aren't in the House of the legislature, in the community. And I know where you're going to be tonight, and I know where Leo's been, and I know there's places that we all can travel in. There's places I can go and talk and have a conversation that I may be a better voice, and there's places you can go and talk and you can have a conversation and you might be a better voice, but we're all doing this together. And so I think a lot of this effort, for good reasons, and Justin knows this too, there's a huge advocacy effort going on there. Yeah. And I think one of our real challenges that we've all been trying to think about is, how do you marry up this really amazing advocacy effort that's pure and good, and it's wholesome, and it comes from a real good place, and it is the core of this effort in the medicinal world and in the communities and in the churches and other places. How do you bring the industry into that world and educate them? And I think the good news for us is we've been doing that. You're doing it in forums like this. You're doing it tonight in the forum you're going to be in. And there's a lot of folks doing it out there. And I think that, frankly, hasn't happened in the legislature. That's going to start to happen, too. So, and I applaud you for what. I know where you are. I know what you've been doing. And I know where Leo's been, too. So it's been good stuff.
Thank you.
Let's keep going. More from you, less from me. Ron's going to go, then Oscar's going to go.
Hi, Ron Shapiro from CMS Technology. We focus on it's a specialty chemical company focused on antimicrobial, anti-mold, even soaps, trying to see how we could help the industry. Two key questions for you. One, in regards to the counties that seem to be opposed and the politics at play, it seems to me a lot of it is about whether or not revenues come directly to the county versus just to the state. Why not just do what California's doing and have also a local tax and get more counties on board? That's one question. And another one that I think is pretty important. I saw an article a couple of weeks ago where the Koch brothers have come out and said, back off to the Trump administration. This is about states' rights. Why is that not being, played all across the country? Because it's a big deal. The Koch brothers are pretty damn influential.
I don't think most people, I'll say something real quick on that, and then I'll answer your other one. I don't think most people care about the federal government right now. I don't think they're focused on it. I think the Sessions thing happened, everybody paused for a minute, they looked around, and they just kept going. So I don't think there's a lot of focus on that, and yes, that did happen, and that's just another sign of why I don't think people are freaking out. On your other question, though, there are no prohibitions on that, and you're a great example of this. You're not a cannabis company, right? And I bet you half this room, you're not cannabis companies. You're not going to touch the flower. You're not going to. You see where this is going, right? This is going to increase your sales. There's a potential now. There's a new industry coming. Your tax revenue is going to go up. You're going to stay wherever you are. You might grow your operation. There's new property tax revenue for whatever town you're in or where you're going to be in. So there's that's going to happen. But there's no prohibition in this bill that is being contemplated right now that isn't going to allow for some other, we'll call it local VIG, if you will. We're in Jersey, after all. I think the question on a larger policy level, and I don't know if we have any cannabis industry people proper here, how high is too high? I mean, Billy was mentioning internet gambling, right? That issue became a very big deal in the legislature. And everybody was like, well, how much can we tax this, right? That's it, how high? And we saw this back in the days of casino gaming. How much can we tax it? There's a threshold. And then it becomes unprofitable, and then the industry collapses. Yeah. So, this is a golden goose, but we can't kill the golden goose.
Hello, gentlemen. A little closer. My name is Oscar, Citigroup. I have two questions, one for Mr. Jewell and Mr. Egan. Do you see a marketplace developing at all for accredited investors interested more in debt as opposed to equity? And Mr. Egan, there's currently a real estate investment trust listed in the New York Stock Exchange, Innovative Industrial Properties. Do you see that business model at all taking off here in New Jersey? And is that something maybe CBRE would be interested in once regulations come?
Did you say in reference to debt?
As opposed to equity.
As opposed to equity. My partner's in the back of the room, and that's his specialty. He is definitely, so we can talk a little bit further, but there is definitely a warm spot for debt, the debt market in terms of being able to loan money out and receive it on a faster basis. So there's an entire space for that. So yes, in a basic way. But I think that we should definitely talk a little bit later.
In response to your question, two things. Number one, CBRE is a publicly held company, and we are not engaging in this industry until such time as the regulations enable us to. Okay, and so I think the REITs that are going to get into this, what they're doing is, and I think this is a brilliant idea actually, because it's sort of like WeWork space. They're going to acquire properties for all cash. They're going to develop those properties to enable growers to come in and not have a huge investment out of their pockets. Of course, the rent is going to reflect that, right? So it's a great financial model for them. What does it do as far as the rest of us? It's probably going to lead to higher pricing of space across the board. So your company, Ron, is going to be winding up paying more rent for the next space that you're going to lease when your business grows as a result of the expansion because of the cannabis industry. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's good for the industry, the real estate industry, but may not be so good, if you think about all the ramifications down the road. And as I said from the beginning, we don't have that much industrial space in the state of New Jersey right now. So there's about 13 million square feet that's coming online, being built. Probably not nearly enough to meet the needs of the general industry, never mind what the cannabis industry will bring to the table.
Let me jump in here with one, and we've talked a little bit about how everything is within the state and we're not crossing state lines, and I think all of us anticipate that one day that changes, where now you're going to have big national companies coming in with big dollars doing things that we can't. So for people in this room that want to get in on the logistical side, maybe the one-off sides, they get a little bit of a head start. How do they view that in anticipation of what might be coming and other big powers coming in to try to take that business? How do they get established? How does that play out?
They're probably doing it in some respects already. And I imagine some of you folks that are sitting here right now service, very large corporate clients that are not based here in New Jersey. They just have a sort of satellite here, and it runs the gamut. I mean, paper supply, right? A lot of this isn't centralized, right? They'll find vendors here in New Jersey. That's where I think this sweet spot will continue, no matter what happens here. I think ultimately, when the federal interstate commerce walls are broken down, there are going to be, a couple companies that come in and swallow everything up across the nation. They'll consolidate. We've seen this in almost every industry. So why would we not expect it here? But it's those smaller support structure industries that I think are going to remain, because you're not going to replicate that across the board. So I think, in fact, that's why these types of discussions are so important about when we talk about growing our cannabis industry. It's not necessarily the cannabis industry we're going to grow here in New Jersey.
Good morning. I'm David Garber of Princeton Legal Search Group. Bill, a question for you. And it's somewhat of a follow-on to Tom's question, and that is, this goes to the lobbying efforts that are underway now. So my sense is that there are a number of smaller companies and companies that are really poised to step into this market here in New Jersey. But I'm curious, are the now established companies, larger companies in the state, the logistics companies, the warehousing companies, the larger agricultural companies, are they lobbying? Are they going to be in this game too? And how are the smaller companies going to be protected?
Interesting enough, large business right now doesn't know what to do. So I'm a board member on the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. We'll hopefully see you all on the trip down to Washington tomorrow. the chamber's coming around on this, right? Looking at where they want to be because they see new business opportunities, they see the ability for synergies to exist. Big business is also concerned right now about work rules. And I will say this to you, not as your labor attorney, as an attorney. A good labor attorney will help you through that process. This is not a place to be scary. I'm not allowed to come to work drunk, and I'm not going to be allowed to come to work high. So those seem to be some of the concerns if there's any lobbying effort from the big business side of the world. But what I'm seeing is really three things in this industry. There is an industry. It sits in California and Nevada and other places, and it's established. There are big players in that market. There are investors in Canada and other places that are coming in, and they're here. They're here in New Jersey right now. They're looking at established local connections, and they're lobbying, and they're hiring all of us on State Street, and they're in. They're ready to go. You got the local flavor. A lot of folks in this room. Put aside whether you're sort of a peripheral. If you want to be, you're here for a license. You're here to be involved. You want to touch the plant. They're looking for you, and there's this matchmaking going on, and you might also be looking for your own license, and there'll be opportunities. And you folks know how to do this. You're here. You're educating yourself. And one other thing I told somebody the other day, I get at least once a day. I had a call the other day from a guy who didn't own. He worked or ran a auto body shop, and he called me out of the blue. He saw one of my things online or something like that, and he said, "Hey,
probably reads ROI."
I would think that's where it was. How do I get a license? And I spent 30 minutes with the guy, just kind of talking him down off a ledge, because that's a big question, right? Just out of the blue, calling somebody on the phone. But there's folks like that are out there right now that are energized and want to change their life and have some money saved away, and they want to be in this market. I don't know if the license is the path for them, but the big business side of the world hasn't really come, I think, into full swing, except for this. And I'll end with this because this is about, I think, why a lot of folks are starting to jump into this too. I work for the 4th or 5th largest law firm in the state, founded on Quaker roots. I mean, most of our shareholders are in their 70s. Nothing against folks in their 70s or shareholders, particularly mine at my firm. I convinced these guys after I'd been there a year that I wanted to go out and volunteer my time and create New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform with the NAACP and the ACLU, who, by the way, sometimes we're adverse to in court cases, and get out there on this issue because I saw it coming and I thought it made sense and whatever. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. Right. And guess what? We were in a meeting the other day with the top brass of our law firm and some of our clients talking about how incredible it was for Archer and Griner to be out in the forefront of this. The only reason why they were is because they took the risk and they got there. But there are others coming along now, too, and they understand this. And I think what you're starting to see is big industry is coming around and recognizing this now.
I concur. With your article that actually came out yesterday, we started to get an onslaught of calls and people who had pretty much closed the door to us, like, who are you guys, get away. And now they're like, oh, great article. We should talk. Sit down and talk. So the doors are opening pretty much because they're seeing the wave move towards legalization is going to happen. Where are we going to fit in this model? What do we need to do? And a lot of those are some smaller firms, but larger firms as well.
All right, excellent stuff. So here's what we're going to do. Here's a little, we got one more question. That's what we're going to do.
Hello. Here I am. Hi, my name is Ron Turner. Good morning, everybody. Partners of Jewel up at the stage. And the reason I took the mic is I wanted to address the gentleman's question. He had a question around debt versus equity.
Yeah.
So, in the market, as you look at entrepreneurship, people who are looking to raise capital, those are 2 different entities, right? They're trying to fund something or you're trying to figure out a debt solution. Both of those are fine. When you look at, you mentioned the word unaccredited investor, that would more likely be a debt scenario because you don't necessarily may not have the temperament or the appetite for a 3-year or 4-year or 5-year lockup of your money. You want that money to turn around more quickly than that. And so a debt solution would be a better fit for that mindset and that person in that particular scenario at that point. But overall, as an entity, we are able to satisfy both sides of that. And so what we really encourage everybody to do is just be knowledgeable, be out front of it. And if you don't have enough information, that's exactly what our association is designed to provide you with, is arm you and surround you with the professionals so you can get the objectives achieved that you want. And so we've done our research, we've got the hooks into where we need to be, and we're still evolving. So we encourage everybody to join, be a part of the conversation, and figure out where it is that you want to play in that market and figure out how we can help you do that.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up. We're going to start with our marketing agency, MarketSmith, which has wonderful stuff for us, has put together a video. So we're going to take you to the video board just to prove we're a multimedia organization. And let's see what we got here. I hear it's short and sweet and very impressive. All right, I'll admit I didn't realize that was about us. I thought it was about cannabis, but we welcome you. Seems pretty awkward. We do encourage you guys to subscribe. We do encourage you guys to interact with us. So let's thank the sponsors of our event. What we like to do, we've been going about an hour, which is about as long as people like to go. Thank you for the questions. As I said at the beginning, I think this is much better when we get the feedback from the audience. So everyone here who wants to stick around can stick around. So let's go. Let's start with LaQuay Jewell and his partner,
Ron Turner.
Ron Turner over there. These guys are going to be around, available for you guys to talk to. Randy Eigen for CBRE is going to be here. Bill Caruso of Archer Griner, of course, is going to be here taking questions. I'm going to point out Rick Fremer. Rick works with Eisler Amper. They're a major sponsor of this event. Rick can tell you everything that's going on in California and Colorado and on the accounting side. So I thank all of you guys for the sponsors. I thank all of you guys for coming here. Publications are there. We'll be on the walk to Washington if you are. Come say hello. So let's wrap it up with a round of applause for our panelists. All right, we like to view ROI as a connector of businesses, so now we got a little bit more time to connect. Stay as long as you like. We've got the room all morning. Thank you.